From the beautiful city of Los Angeles, California, we bring you the Gimme Three podcast. Hello and welcome, cinephiles, cinema lovers, and movie appreciators to the Gimme Three podcast. This is the podcast where we pick three films connected by one theme. I'm Nicholas Ibarra. I'm joined, as always, by my tremendous co-host, Bella Efstratus. Bella, how you doing today?
Hello. I'm doing well. You know, it's Oscar Sunday.
We are recording this on Oscar Sunday, yes.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited. Spent the whole day yesterday trying to catch up on all the Best Picture nominees. There's so many. Yeah, so I'm feeling good. It's a holiday for me.
What is your so what do? Do you get like a party going? Are you sit at home and watch it by yourself, nobody talk to me type gal? What kind of food, what kind of spread do you got on the menu here?
These are really good questions. Yeah. I love to have a party last year. I don't know if we'll do one this year, but last year I hosted a whole party with like champagne and brownies and snacks. And
brownies or brownies?
Sadly, just brownies.
Okay.
maybe today we'll do brownies. But no, but it was really fun. One of our friends, Trey, who we've had on the podcast, printed out these not ballots. What's the word I'm thinking of for just choosing who you think is gonna win?
Yeah, ballots.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. So I'll have to run that back.
Very nice. Well, speaking of the Academy Awards, we're going to be discussing an Academy Award winner today. And if you joined us last week, you were treated to an episode highlighting the work of Daniel Kaluuya, one of the finest young actors working today. And on this episode, we're going back. We're going way back, in fact, to cinematic era from nearly 100 years ago.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. Today, we are celebrating the career of Claudette Colbert. And I say cinematic era, but her career actually expanded eras, you know. Mm. This is the Eras tour of Claudette Colbert.
Oh, no.
We are actually only talking really about, her a small portion of her career here. Claudette Colbert, for those who don't know, she was one of the highest paid actors in her time. She's one of the just absolutely gorgeous face. She was one of the biggest stars. She got her start on Broadway and soon found her way onto the set of her first motion picture in 1927. It was a silent film called For the Love of Mike, and it was directed by Frank Capra. And she hated it. She hated Capra. She hated the movies. She hated the whole stop-start thing. She was a Broadway actress. She just thought the whole experience was awful. And she vowed to never make a film again. She said, I will never, ever do this again. Her next movie was called Hole in the Wall. Because you see, the emergence of talkies, sound in motion pictures, Claudette Colbert was, I think, smart enough to recognize that the film industry was about to explode. And when you've got a mug like Claudette Colbert and the acting chops of Claudette Colbert, you need to take advantage of that. So she left Broadway. She made her way to Hollywood, where she became one of the brightest young stars of the pre-code era, one of the highest paid actresses of the 30s and 40s, and she was a bona fide legend by the time the golden era of Hollywood came around. So to kick off Women's History Month here in March, we thought, what better way to celebrate than with a woman who made all kinds of history in her own right, Claudette Colbert. Bella, was this your introduction to Miss Colbert here?
This was my introduction. Yeah, and I'm now a huge fan. Oh my God. How could I not be?
Yeah, she's very funny. She's the total package. She could give you the dramatic performances. She could give you the quick witty jabs, and she's just got these eyes that just really pull you in.
Yeah, it's so true. She kind of almost I grew up a lot on Shirley Temple. And she almost reminds me of her in a weird way. Maybe that sounds wrong because that's obviously like a child, but
but she does have, especially when she smiles, you know, or when she like lights up and laughs, she's got this kind of like her shoulders kind of go up in her ears a little bit. It's kind of like Shirley Temple used to do, and she got this like innocent little giggly thing about her.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which just shows how great of an actress she is, because apparently she was an absolute total nightmare to work with. So she was not all innocent and, you know, like bubbly. She was a total force to be reckoned with on set, especially with like crew members. Like she only liked to be shot from her left side. Like a lot of camera folk and, you know, the lighting folk like had a lot of back and forths with her because she liked to be shot a certain way. And sometimes they'd be like, oh man, we got this great idea how we're going to do this scene. And she'd be like, the fuck you are. That's not my good side, bitch. You're going to shoot it this way. And it's like, oh, well, there goes that day.
Telling them how to do their job.
So anyways, Claudette Colbert, outstanding actor, total bombshell, and a key piece of cinematic history, as we are going to get into with our first film here, our first film of the day. One of my all-time favorites. Sonja reminded me this was one of the first movies I took her to see, like early in our dating.
Oh my God, that's so cute. I love that.
It Happened One Night, 1934, starring Claudette Colbert and Clark Gable. Written by Robert Riskin and directed by the man that Claudette hated, the director of her first picture, Frank Capra. The film follows Ellen Andrews, who's Claudette, and she is a spoiled heiress who is recently eloped with some hoity-toity pilot, King Wesley. And her father does not approve of this marriage. And he says, God damn, woman, you're going to get this marriage annulled. And Ellen says, beans to that. I am jumping off this here yacht that you've got, and I am running away from your rules and your millions of dollars, and I'm getting out of here. So she jumps off of a boat and swims to God knows where. They're in Florida somewhere. So it's amazing she didn't get eaten by an alligator, but that's a story for another day. So anyways, Ellen is on the run, aiming to make her way to New York City as fast as possible to reunite with her stuck-up twig of a husband, King Wesley. And on this journey, she crosses paths with this down-on-his-luck, fast-talking, smart-ass of a journalist named Peter Warren. And Peter Warren has just been fired from his newspaper in New York. And he happens to be on the same bus as Ellen. And he kind of sees how, I don't know, hopeless this woman is. She can't, I mean, she's like, you know, she's been sheltered her whole life. She can't budget. She can't keep track of which way's up or down. She thinks a bus driver's just going to wait for her so she can go finish her extravagant breakfast. So anyways, Peter makes her an offer. He says, okay, listen to this. I will help get you to New York so you can reunite with your precious King Wesley husband. And in exchange, you give me an exclusive story covering your travel journey to love. And Ellen agrees. And thus begins one of the greatest road trip movies ever made, one of the greatest romantic comedy films ever made. And if you ask any, you know, film scholarly magazine, any film school list, any, you know, AFI list, all the lists, and of course, if you ask me, also one of the greatest movies, all stop, ever made. The only person who might disagree actually said this. They said, the worst picture ever. You know who said that?
Who?
Claudette Colbert.
No way.
She did not like Frank Capra, man. But
Oh
anyways,
my God.
it happened
That
one
is
night.
hilarious.
What'd you think of this one, Bella?
Oh, I mean, yeah, come on. It's so easy to see how this is a classic. I feel like, and it's easy to see the way that it influenced so many other films after it, like just the road trip genre, in a way. I feel like and was invented here. There's like a Bonnie and Clyde vibe to it as well when they're on the side of the road. And just like the instant chemistry between Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert and their characters is like, it's unreal.
Yeah. Super, like really out of this world chemistry. Like,
yeah.
It's not really a super sexy movie. Like, it's not risque at all, but like you just it just feels like, oh my God, these guys, when they get it on, they are gonna get it on.
And the writing is like, it feels almost like something you would see today in a way. Obviously, it's very much of its time, but it's just so natural and it's so witty, absolutely hilarious. I think one of my favorite scenes was when they're trying to cross a river and they're talking about piggybacking.
Yes, that's one of my favorite moments too.
It was so funny because I was watching it while Jonathan was in the kitchen and he's like, what the fuck are they talking about? And then he like comes and looks and I was like, piggybacking. I'm like, he's like, oh my God, they're actually talking about piggybacking.
But yeah, my favorite part of that scene, so Clark Gable's got Claudette Colbert over his shoulders and he's like carrying her across a river, and she's talking, and she goes, "Oh, this is reminds me of when my dad used to take me piggybacking." And he's like, "This ain't piggybacking. This is, what are you talking about? This is not how you piggyback." And she's like, "Yeah, it is." And she's making this argument for it. And my favorite is the button on that scene where he goes, "Here, hold this for a second," and he has her hold the bag, which is only free hand is doing. And then she takes the bag and he uses his free hand and he smacks her on the ass and spanks her. Oh my God.
So
it's so funny.
Oh yeah. So many unforgettable moments like that. You can imagine how audiences felt seeing this for the first time in theaters. I mean, come on. They're like, best movie ever.
Yeah, I remember seeing this for the first time. It was in my Great Directors of Cinema class at Orange Coast College. Or it was my Film History 101 class. It was in one of those, like base
Falls
level.
into those big categories.
Yeah. Base level, like here's the history of movies, classes. So anyways, it's one of those like auditorium like classrooms with like, whatever, 300 seats or something. So the classroom's totally filled. And it's a junior college, which I love junior colleges because you get like, it's obviously a lot of like kids 18 to 20 or whatever, but there's also just like people, in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s in there too. So you get kind of like the whole gamut. And I remember the professor, Bill Hall, DGA member Bill Hall, if you're listening, love you, man. He was like, who's seen this movie? And only maybe, 15, 20 hands go up. So it was a whole fresh experience for most of and it was pretty much wall to wall laughter for this movie. It was electric. I felt like I was seeing it. I felt like it was 1934 and we were in a theater full of people seeing it for the first time. It was one of the unforgettable movie going experiences of my life.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. So yeah, I just love this movie. I love, as you mentioned, the chemistry between Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. And I love Colbert's character in this because I was thinking about this on this watch, which is like this movie came out, like basically in the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And she is a spoiled brat, for lack of a better term.
Hey, brat.
Hey, brat.
Hey, brat. Talking to me? Yes.
This movie is the opposite of one of my least favorite genres of movies, which is the Gilded Cage movie. Which I'm sorry to throw your gal under the bus here, Bella.
Oh, no.
Sofia Coppola.
Oh yes.
I'm
No, I'm aware.
the one of the reasons why I don't connect with her work so much is because she makes these gilded cage movies, you know, these
Mhm.
wealthy women, these brats, for lack of a better term, who are, you know, trapped by their wealth and their expectations, and they do nothing for most of the movie except be trapped and be blue and be, oh, woe is me, I am so wealthy. Isn't that sad? Until just, you know, moments before the credits roll where they, you know, walk out of the proverbial door.
Right.
This movie takes the person in the gilded cage, and she jumps out that door in the first 3 minutes of the movie, and you know she's taken action, and she may not be the smartest, or she may not be the most I wouldn't even say smart, because she actually is very smart. She's
Yeah.
just not she doesn't have the most world experience. She's not
Yeah.
street smart,
Exactly. Yeah.
but she's willing to take a risk. And you know, despite being wealthy, and again, this movie came out of the Depression, audience were like, this lady's all right. And you got you get that scene with when they're on the bus, and
Mm.
there's this mother who passes out and is like sick. She's famished, and her poor little boy is just crying his eyes out, and he's
Mm.
telling Ellen like, oh, it's just because she's hungry, and we're on this bus because my mom got this job and we need the job, so we're going over there, and she just hasn't eaten in days. And Ellen gives them their last $10, which of course Peter's like, God damn, woman, that was our last $10. Again, not street smart, but you know, it also should, like, hey, she does have a heart here, you know. So, you know,
Yeah.
for the 1934 audience, they're like, this dame's all right. This dame is all
Mhm.
right. So, anyways, we're going to talk about this in one of the other movies today too, because there's a lot of movies and TV shows right now that are focusing on or highlighting like the uber wealthy
Mhm.
and doing it in a very certain kind of way. And this movie and another movie that we're talking about do it in a very different kind of way. So it's like it's just
Yeah.
interesting to kind of see the different approaches. And in this one, what you get with this approach is one of the most memorable characters, one of the most memorable films of all
Yeah.
time.
I would even add like the father in this, her
Mm-hmm.
dad. For like the first half of the film, I was like, wow, this guy is evil because she's escaped from him. Literally, he's like he's like calling the newspaper, like, put the headline, daughter escapes father. And you're like, what kind of freak is this guy?
Right.
Like, that's a crazy headline. And she's like 21, you know, it's not like she's a young girl, like lost in the world. By the second half of the film, when they're reunited, he's so gentle with her. Like, my first impression in the beginning is that they had a really like awful relationship, and then you see that there's like so much more there between them, and he really does just want her happiness. And you know, he's very particular about who she marries, because all these guys just throw themselves at basically him through her.
Right.
And you like don't expect that from a character like that. You kind of, you know, with that context, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as he meets Peter Warren and sees that Peter Warren is a man of integrity and a man
Mhm.
of principle, and I mean, he flat out asks him, he's like, do you love my daughter? And Peter Warren does everything he can to avoid the question. She's despicable. She's a brat. She's spoiled. Are you kidding me? No, do you love my daughter? She's annoying. She's this. She's that. It's like, do you love my daughter? Yes.
And then he says, but don't hold it against me. I'm a little screwy myself.
Yeah, right.
So good. Oh,
but that's enough for him to just hear. It's like, okay, this is what he wants for his daughter. He wants love for his daughter, you know.
yeah, it's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. So I guess we should probably talk about, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more too when I do my Give Me Three pieces of trivia, but
Yeah.
the hitchhiking scene.
Oh, yes.
What'd you think of that one?
That was so good. Oh my God. Another just memorable moment. Like, you know how in our last episode we were talking about that scene with Daniel Kaluuya in Get Out when he's sinking, crying into the sunken place, basically, and the tears are falling down his face. And we were talking about how that'll be in like the greatest movies of all time reels. And I feel like Clark Gable putting up that thumb is definitely a moment in there as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the scene is Peter and Ellen hanging off of a fence, and he's trying to explain, you know, she's like, how are we going to get to New York now? We got no money. We got nothing. And he goes, we're going to hitchhike, dame, you know? And he's like telling her like all the ways to hitchhike. He's going to write a book about it. All the ways to stick out your thumb. He's like, sometimes you give him a little look like this. Here, see, you know? If you waggle it like this, or sometimes you go long and you bring the thumb all the way around, you know? So anyways, he's doing all these thumb tricks as the cars are passing him by, and the cars just go boom, boom, boom past him, and he's just waving them down. Like, anyway, it's a hilarious scene. You got to see it for yourself because he is great in it.
Yeah.
But then you get the best part of the scene is Claudette Colbert stands up. She's like, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it without my thumb. And one car is coming over, and she just lifts her skirt and shows her absolutely bombshell of a gam leg out there, and it's like, booey, and the car goes, slams on the brakes. So the funny thing about that scene is Claudette did not want to do that scene. She said,
really?
She said it was, quote, highly inappropriate. And then so Frank Capra was like, okay, fine. You don't have to do it. I'm just going to get this other dame over here and we'll use her legs for it. And then and then so Claudette says, no. Nobody has better legs than me. Get the camera. We're doing it right now.
Oh, what an icon.
Because she had, you know, like why she had such great legs. She even credited her great legs to this. She said, I got the best legs in the game because when she was growing up in France, actually, she lived on like the 10th floor of some, you know, building, and they had no elevator. So she would be walking up the stairs every day, 10 floors to get there. So that's how she got the best looking legs in the game.
That'll do it.
And it resulted in one of the funniest scenes of all time.
Oh, it's so good.
I guess that's a good a time as any to transition into our segment. Gimme Three Pieces of Trivia.
Woohoo!
I want to play a game.
Okay. So we'll just stick with that scene, that famous hitchhiking scene, since we're on the subject. That scene really did change the course of pop culture forever. I'm going to explain why. Clark Gable, you're like, okay, goddamn, this guy is so good looking, you know?
Yeah.
And he is so cute, but he's like eating a carrot, and it's like, God damn, brother, you're eating that thing like a disgusting rabbit. Like, have you no decorum, you know? So anyways, he's leaning on the fence. He's very relaxed. He's very laissez-faire, and he's just like munching on this carrot with an open mouth, but he's still kind of cool. Well, it's been said by many and confirmed by a few that the whole demeanor of Clark Gable in that scene, you know, leaning on the fence, chewing on the carrot while delivering smart-ass remarks, is the inspiration for one Bugs Bunny.
No way.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it.
Oh yeah, no, it's there. He's the gangster lean on the fence, munching on the carrot. You know, he's like kind of like too cool to even like fully open his eyes. You know, it's like yeah, whatever. What do you want from me?
Oh my god, that is so funny.
As I mentioned, Claudette Colbert only liked being shot from one side of her face, so that scene where they're in the they have to share a room, you know, the cabin they stay in overnight on one part of their road trip. And that's why it's kind of odd that she like chooses to use the other side of the room that she's already on, and she like goes over to the other side because like she wants to be shot from her left side. So,
oh my God.
But anyways, that's the famous scene where Clark Gable, puts up the walls of Jericho, so
Yep.
so nobody can see anything. And before he does that, or before Claudette goes to the other side of the room, Clark Gable starts undressing and explaining that every man has a different method for the way that they undress. While they're shooting this scene, Clark Gable had trouble getting through all of this fast talking dialogue and removing all of his clothes like in time. It just like wasn't timing out. So as a result, the undershirt was abandoned. They're like, oh, we'll remove one layer so that way we don't have to worry about that layer. And he'll unbutton his regular shirt and it'll just be, titties.
Right.
Remember last year we did an episode 2004 films. We were celebrating the 20th anniversary of 2004 movies. And we talked about Sideways, and we talked about the sideways effect of how Pinot sales skyrocketed after Sideways came out, and Merlot wine sales plummeted because Paul Giamatti had delivered that famous line, if anybody orders Merlot, I'm leaving. I'm not drinking any fucking Merlot. Merlot, still to this day, is in the fucking shits. 20 odd years later.
Amazing.
This scene allegedly saw a large drop in undershirt sales around the country because Clark Gable did not wear an undershirt. And they said, well, if Clark Gable ain't wearing an undershirt, why in the hell do I need to wear an undershirt? That guy's cool. Look at the names he's grabbing. So, and the legend has it also is that like underwear manufacturers tried to sue Columbia Pictures because of this.
No way.
Now, if I may, like, I think that's a hilarious and great story, and I want to believe it's true. But I also may call bullshit because, I don't know, it was the Great Depression, You know what people needed? Food. You know what they didn't need? Undershirts.
God, such a good point. They're like, oh, it's all because it happened one night.
I'm no economist, but...
can put two and two together.
Yeah. So anyways, I just think it's a funny story.
That is hilarious.
And as you mentioned, Bella, today is the Academy Awards the day that we are recording this, and it will be released the day after the Academy Awards. So it is worth mentioning that this was the first film to win all of the Big Five.
Wow.
You know what the Big Five is?
Is it Best Picture, Best Actor, Screenplay? What else would it be?
Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Screenplay.
There you go. Yeah.
The Big Five. It won all of them. It won all of them. Sweeped them.
Sheesh.
And if you're curious, only 2 other movies have ever done that since.
What are they?
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, wow.
And Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, let's go. That's crazy. I didn't know it was Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, only 3 movies ever have won the Big Five. And it happened one night, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and Silence of the Lambs. All mouthful titles. So if you want to win the Big Five, you better get yourself a mouthful title. Okay, so there you go. Give me 3 pieces of trivia for It Happened One Night.
I love it. That was great. That was great trivia.
Yeah, a bona fide classic. If you guys haven't seen it, you are missing out. It's so rewatchable also. Like it's something that you watch it once, you could watch it 100 times. Like I just watched it the other day. I could put it on today again and have it just as equally a good time. It's so one of those kind of movies. And if you want to watch it right now, you could check it out on the Criterion channel. On the Criterion channel, they do in fact have right now an entire collection of films dedicated to Claudette Colbert. I think they got over a dozen Claudette Colbert movies on there right now. So we obviously are just scratching the surface here, but this is one of the movies they got on there.
Up next, we've got Midnight from 1939, directed by Mitchell Eisen and written by the legendary Billy Wilder and Charles Brackett. It's a screwball Cinderella story packed with glamour, romance, and truly razor-sharp banter. With a star-studded cast, of course, we've got Claudette Colbert, Donna Mecci, John Barrymore, Francis Lederer, Mary Astor, and Elaine Barry. This is obviously a classic for a reason. Our star of the hour, Claudette Colbert, plays Eve Peabody, an American showgirl who arrives in Paris with nothing but an evening gown and her quick wit after losing everything at a casino in Monte Carlo. Eve hitches a ride with Tibor Cherny, a sympathetic taxi driver played by Donna Mecci, who instantly falls in love with her. As he drives her from club to club in search of a job, their easy chemistry grows, and Tibor even offers her a place to stay for the night. But of course, Eve has bigger plans. Before he even has the chance to take her home, she slips away into the rainy night, determined to talk her way into the high life. Crashing an elite society party, Eve reinvents herself as Baroness Cherny. Wonder where she got that name. And catches the attention of a wealthy businessman, Georges Falmarion, I believe, played by the great John Barrymore. And seeing a unique opportunity, Georges offers Eve a once-in-a-lifetime deal. If she can seduce Jacques Picot, a playboy who's been romancing his wife, then he will basically bankroll her new glamorous life. And just like that, Eve lands herself a luxurious Parisian suite, a full wardrobe of designer gowns, and a golden ticket into high society. But just as she's settling in, good old Tibor tracks her down, posing as her long-lost husband, which really throws a wrench in this perfect scheme she's got going on here, and really forces Eve to choose between the financial security that she's chasing and the love that she might already have. So, quick-witted dialogue, mistaken identities, all the charm in the world of classic Hollywood. Midnight. What'd you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, Midnight. Is the perfect blend of 1930s screwball comedy and 1940s screwball comedy. And it came out in 1939, so I guess that makes sense.
Oh yeah,
it's kind of like the transition.
Right on the line. Yeah.
It highlights, again, we're talking about, the analysis or the depiction of the uber wealthy, around this time. And this movie perfectly highlights the ridiculous nature of the super wealthy, how empty and how deceitful they could be, and how empty and deceitful people are willing to be to try and get into this world.
Yeah.
Themes that were very big in the late 30s and early 40s in the screwball era. And again, as I mentioned, now in a very modern way, we're kind of seeing us revisit these themes again, not in a screwball way, more in a dark comedy way. We see it with like Succession and The Menu,
White Lotus,
Triangle of Sadness. So, it's kind of a sign of the times. Like, I think these movies were happening during this time, again, because of the Great Depression. And it was like fun to kind of be like, okay, well, these people have money and we don't. So let's make fun of them. Fuck them.
Yeah.
And for good reason, and I think we're seeing that same, we're feeling that economic tension and feeling the purse strings tighten now, and having a response to it, and recognizing that the rich people are not only bastards but ridiculous. So anyways, just
excellent
fun
point. I think it also really explores how much Eve is torn between like material security and then Real Love.
Mhm.
And just like, we see her fight so hard for this life that she doesn't have. And right as she's about to achieve, right as she's about to grab it, she's like, I don't know, maybe not. Like maybe this really rich guy isn't actually that great compared to this guy who's putting everything on the line for me. And it's just so classic. It's such a classic trope.
And the thing that I love about Billy Wilder and Charles Brackett as a combo writing team, and Billy Wilder in general, is they deliver some of the best female characters from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. I mean, you think about The Apartment, Sunset Boulevard, Sabrina, Some Like It Hot. I mean, Wilder just has a talent for writing memorable female characters, and this one is no different because, as you say, she's got this dilemma. Is like, okay, do I want to be like rich and have security and not worry for the rest of my life, or do I want love? Which is like, okay, that is a conflict-filled dilemma for a character to have. But you hear why she also has this dilemma also. And I mean, now I'm sure the why would be, present first and foremost, but maybe not in every 1930s movies would we care why, but this one, she says flat out, it's like, it's because her parents fell out of love and had a nasty divorce, and she has lost faith in love. Because she saw it crumble before her eyes. So it justifies everything in the movie.
No, that was one of my biggest notes, was like, it feels progressive for its time with Eve Peabody specifically. Like, she really is a very strong, independent woman. And like, throughout this whole film, she's doing everything like to actively shape her own fate rather than like wait around for rescue, kind of, even though there are like wealthy men in her life trying to control her decisions or influence her decisions. And so, yeah, I loved seeing that. And I love the way she just like completely speaks her mind as well. I mean, she is something else in this. Claudette Colbert. This was the first one I watched.
Okay.
So
nice.
I was like, oh my God, this woman is incredible. She's so funny, like her dry delivery, perfect timing, just owns this role. And yeah, I just loved how unapologetically herself she was, like always speaking her mind. She doesn't play coy about what she wants. And her arc is really about bravery in a way, not just like in crafting a new life, but also in risking her heart for love. And it just breaks you down. It's so good.
There, and it, again, like as you mentioned, it's also filled with laughs. Like it's got all these kind of layers and societal commentary, but it is a really funny movie. And like sometimes it goes freaking ham with the comedy. Like it is a screwball comedy,
Oh yeah, I loved this movie. There's such a great scene with John Barrymore and our lead guy, Tybor. What's his name? Donamechi?
Yeah.
Or something like that. Oh, I'm gonna butcher explaining this. It's the scene where they're on the phone.
Yeah. So Donamechi has arrived at this, palatial estate, this mansion, to kind of like to spoil Eve's trying to get into this rich class, and he basically says like, yes, this is my wife. She's been passing off as like the Baroness. Well, I am the Baron. And so the morning after, as a way to like get them out of there, he says, oh, you know what? We just got word that our daughter is very sick and we must leave immediately. And this was the first hilarious thing. It's like they hand her a note and she opens the note and it's a raggedy ass drawing of this little girl with her hair all frizzled out. And she's got like X's on her eyes and it says, please come home. Love, Francie.
Yes.
I saw that picture and I lost it. I was like, oh my God.
It's so good. And her reaction to it is so like she's trying to be so poised and like, oh no, but she's like dying inside.
So anyways, they're like, she's like, okay, well, she's trying to figure out a way out of this. She's like, let me go call. I'm going to go call the daughter. And so she goes over to the phone. He's trying to stop her. Donna Meshi's trying to stop her. All the rich people are like, oh my, what is happening? This is the daughters, but oh my, and she's on the phone. One of the rich guys who wants her to stay, knows who she is, knows that she's not a baroness, but wants her to stay so that way she could break up the potential courtship between his wife and some girl some dude she's having an affair with. It's totally fucked, It's like a totally
yeah, it's so messed up.
But anyways, Donna Meshi gets on the phone, and the rich guy who wants her to stay is playing the kid. He's like, Dada, I'm sick. I'm feeling better now. Goodbye.
Oh, it cracks me up. I just love Donna Meshi's face in that when he hears someone on the other line.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? Who is this? What's going on? Oh, it's like such a good competition of like, who can be more convincing, which is obviously another trope we see in rom-coms as well down the line. Oh man, yeah, watching this I kind of was just like, I wish movies like this still were made. Even it's just also amazing to go back and watch these films that are now like almost 100 years old that still work so well today because of their performances, the writing, the charm, and like it was just really interesting to watch this. Before this we had watched Nickel Boys and Honora, which are very like experimental in their cinematography and visual aesthetic. And then going back to Midnight, which really relies on these like long shots and close-ups. Those are like the only two things. I don't know. There's just such a stillness in this film that really lets the performances shine so much. I just loved it. It was so charming. And even though it wasn't like jumping all over the place visually, I was completely mesmerized,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Between the dialogue and just Claudette Colbert's, what are the kids? Her Riz. She got Riz,
She got Riz.
She got Riz. It's just
she
Riz.
Really
Who needs to do some crazy dolly shot when you got Riz?
Yeah, the kind of woman anyone would fall to their knees for.
Oh, yeah.
Or in this case, put a hit on her with all the cab drivers in Paris. Right. That was hilarious to me.
Right.
Our guy, Don Ameche, is like, everyone put down $5 and whoever finds her wins it all. And it's like this entire network of cab drivers throughout Paris looking for this one woman just so he can find her and profess his love. It's so funny. I guess a final thought for me. I love the Cinderella story.
Yeah. And actually, I was watching this with Sonja and she was like, why is it called Midnight? Because at first she thought, which I thought also, that it was all going to take place at one night, and midnight would be a key element of it.
She has a full-on Cinderella moment, she shows up in Paris and then all of a sudden everything's moving so quickly. She's being offered all this money to, like, basically George, whatever his name is, John Barrymore's character is like her fairy godmother.
Right.
He's giving her all these things to put on this facade as Cinderella or Baroness Czerny. She dances with the prince, Jacques Picot. And then she says, don't forget, every Cinderella has her midnight. And it's like a direct acknowledgement of this whole fairy tale structure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And from then on out, things start to crumble around her. This facade starts to crumble, especially as Tybor comes in and tries to like tear it down tooth and nail.
Very smart. Very smart.
Yeah.
Great
it's
movie.
Really fun.
Yeah. Great movie.
And it like plays with expectations too. You're like, Jacques Picot is this new prince, but then it's really this Tybor guy who's like disguised as a mad cab driver. He's like the real romantic hero. I love how batshit crazy the men in this movie are. Like they are completely unhinged, like feral over this woman.
Well, have you ever met French men?
It aligns well.
If anything, they tamed them down. Sorry to our French listeners, male listeners, but y'all need medication. Y'all need to be medicated.
Oh, it's so fun. I mean, Jacques Picot has this great line where the jealous rival lady in his life is like, "Oh, look at that. She has a husband." He says, "Well, what? I eat husbands." I eat husbands. It's so good. Oh my God.
It's good stuff. It is good stuff. Midnight. It is available to stream once again on the Criterion channel. So check it out. All right, my friends. Well, we are going to take a quick break. And during that break, you are going to hear from Gimme Three producer, LADFF Festival director, and my wife, Sonja Mereu, for a segment that we call Sonja's Movie Minute. Stick around for that and much more right here on the Gimme Three podcast.
Hello, I'm Sonja, and this is my Movie Minute. By the time you hear this, the Oscars for 2024 will have been awarded. I'm recording this on the eve of the event, and I want to share a final Gimme Three of exceptional films from 2024. Maybe by now, all of these films will be winners. I'm Still Here. The incredible film from Brazil tells the true story of the Paiva family. In 1970s Rio de Janeiro, the Paiva family lived a vibrant, socially and politically active life in spite of the oppressive military dictatorship. Everything falls apart when the father, Rubens, is forcibly taken from their home for questioning and never returns. Shortly after, the mother, Eunice, and one of the daughters, Eliana, are brought in for questioning and tortured, but eventually released. I won't give away the rest of the movie for anyone who hasn't seen it. The film is perfectly executed in every way, and it's a heartbreaking story that hits home. Although the film is tragic, it's also full of vitality and reminds us that the human spirit and the need to live, love, and fight for justice is very hard to break. I'm Still Here is nominated for Best Picture, Best International Film, and Fernanda Torres is nominated for Best Actress. Flow tells the wordless story of several animals that wouldn't normally get along but have to work together to survive an epic flood, similar to the biblical flood of Noah's Ark. The main character is a black cat who comes from what seems like a cushy life where she was the muse of a great artist. As the floodwaters get higher and higher, the kitty learns to survive against all odds and gives up her aloof kitty ways to become a leader. The animation is gorgeous and hypnotic. And although Flow is not preachy and never explicitly expresses a message, you can't help but think that, like the animals, we have to let go of our preconceived beliefs about independence, pecking order, and entitlement in order to make it. And maybe, if us humans insist on screwing everything up, the animals will still find their way. Flow is nominated for Best International Film and Best Animated Film. It's from Latvia. Last but not least is The Brutalist. So much has been said about this 3.5-hour epic, so I'll keep it brief. It has 10 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. Movies have gotten a lot of flack lately for being too long, and I largely agree, but this movie earns and deserves every minute of screen time. I think the highest praise I can give it is that I thought it was based on a real person or a novel. The vision is so complete and realized, despite the financial, logistical, and commercial challenges that could have killed the film before it ever even made it to production. The Brutalist makes me feel hopeful about the future of filmmaking. Well, I hope the Oscar voters gave us something to celebrate this year.
right, it's the Gimme Three podcast, the show where we pick 3 films connected by one theme. Today we're talking about Claudette Colbert, one of the finest actresses to ever grace the screen. Before the break, we discussed the classic, It Happened One Night, as well as Midnight. And now we are going to discuss one of the more interesting films of her filmography, Imitation of Life, which came out in 1934, the same year that It Happened One Night came out. Directed by John M. Stahl, written by William J. Hurlbut, based on the novel. I don't think it's based on the novel, but the novel by Fannie Hurst, and it stars Claudette Colbert and Louise Beavers. The film is about Bee Pullman, who's played by Claudette Colbert. She's a widow, and she's got a very young daughter, and she's having a rough go at it. She's trying to make ends meet. She's trying to take care of the kids. She's trying to take care of the house. One day, a black housekeeper shows up at her door, Delilah Johnson, played by Louise Beavers. Delilah's looking for a job and room and board for her daughter. She's also a single mother. So Bee, needing the help, agrees, and thus begins like an odd little family. You got Bee and her daughter, Jessie. You've got Delilah and her daughter, Peola, who is black but white passing. So anyway, one day, Delilah makes Bee some of her famous pancakes, a family recipe. And Bee is so taken by them, so blown away, that Bee decides to risk everything she's got to try and open up a store and create this pancake shop. Run by Bee, Delilah makes the pancakes, uses her famous recipe. It works, and the shop becomes very popular, and her recipe turns into this mass production. Mass production turns into this enterprise. It's like an Aunt Delilah enterprise. And there, obviously there seems to be a little bit of similarities or inspiration from Aunt Jemima here, because the pancake mix is called Aunt Delilah's.
Yeah.
So anyways, we got, we're following these 2 women over several years. And by the time we get to like the latter half of the film, the 2 daughters, who when we met them were like 3 and 4 or something, are now young women. They're teenagers or like late teens, early 20s, somewhere around there. And because of this enterprise, they now live in a mansion. But the older Peola gets, Delilah's daughter, the more she becomes ashamed of her blackness. And she does her best to try and just pass herself off as white all the time in public settings. So much so that she decides it's best for her to leave her mother forever and live this new life as a white person. Meanwhile, we got Bee, who has found a potential lover. I didn't even know what this person that had to say this thing. This guy, the guy studies fish. Anyways, but he loves her and she loves him. But she's finding it very difficult to balance love and motherhood and career, and also trying to be there for Delilah in a very tough time in her life. So, of course, this film was remade, 25 years later by Douglas Sirk. And I think that's the version that most people have seen. That's the more well-known version. But considering it's 1934, this is a really fascinating film to look at. This is the year that the Hays Code was enforced, the Motion Picture Production Code. And even at the beginning of this film, the first thing that you see, it says, this movie was approved and whatever thing for the Motion Picture Production Code. So this is one of the first movies. It's funny because I said this movie came out the same year as It Happened One Night. It Happened One Night is considered pre-code because it came out 4 months before the production code was instituted. This movie
Oh, wow.
is Hays Code. So it feels like it.
Yeah.
It always like flirts with getting real and going to really interesting places, and it never really crosses the line to go there. It almost gets there a few different times, but never gets there. But it's a fascinating film to talk about here. Bella, what were your thoughts on Imitation of Life?
Yeah, you touched on it perfectly. I feel like I had a lot of frustrations watching this because it does seem well intentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And it is amazing to see a film of this era really like touch on race and identity and self-love and pride, and even just to have like Delilah, a Black character and Black actress, as a lead in this.
Yeah.
Who is like an equal to Bee's character for the era, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just such a like ring around the rosy, like never stops dancing around the points they're making. I couldn't deal with it by the end of it. I was like, you're so close. Like, just do it.
Yeah, right.
I also could have done without, I think like everything going on with Delilah and Paola was so fascinating and heartbreaking. Yeah, that I didn't really need the whole Bee's side romance drama.
It did feel totally arbitrary and stakeless.
Yeah, like it was like, oh, now that Delilah is having this mother-daughter issue with her daughter Paola, now we need one for Bee and I'm forgetting her daughter's name.
Jessie, I think.
Jessie, yeah, thank you. Like just to make it like toe for toe or whatever, you know. And I tit for tat, I don't know. I was kind of just like, that was completely unnecessary and felt like it was just taking away attention from a very serious like relationship fracture.
Yeah, something that was just simply far more interesting and had far more like emotional weight to it. And it's like every time you would see the scenes between Delilah and Paola, you're just like, oh man, this is really heavy shit. And this is like, and both of the actors are really good in those scenes, you know, where they're together. And then you'd go over to the other scene, and I know we're talking about Claudette Colbert here, and Claudette Colbert is totally serviceable and great in this movie. Like she does her job. Like,
yeah, I agree.
But it's just like, this feels way less important. Every time we were going over there, I was like, yeah, I want to kind of go back to Delilah. You know?
Me too. Well, her character is so surface level. Like, I feel like it's no fault of her own. Like like you're saying, she was just doing what was written on the page.
Yeah.
And what was written on the page for Claudette was just really fucking boring, honestly.
Yeah.
But she makes it lively. Like, I think in the first half, I really, really loved her performance in that character.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, this is just a throwaway for her at all by any means. But yeah, I think her name is Freddie Washington as adult Paola. Just blew me away in this film. Her performance had me on the brink of tears every time she graced the screen. I mean, just gut-wrenching. Felt very from the heart.
Yeah, there's one scene that Louise Beavers delivers that really took me out and nearly brought me to tears too. Is where Paola has gone missing. Like, she's not going to school, so Delilah gets a letter, and she's like, I need to find my daughter. So Bee and Delilah go out together, and they're like searching for Paola, and they see her like in some shop. She's like working in the shop, and Delilah goes in there, and she's like, oh, thank God I found you. Like, where have you been? And this and that. And Paola totally acts like she doesn't know her. And Delilah just like crumbles, and she just like just like, she doesn't even talk. She just like sets her head slowly down on her arms on the counter, and it's like, oh my God, this poor woman. Oh man.
It's devastating.
Yeah.
Such a devastating performance. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So yeah, there are really, really strong elements of this film. But there's just other elements that I think are boring. And then obviously there's some elements that are just really dated. Obviously, like Delilah is depicted as like a straight up mammy caricature, you know, the black housekeeper who's uneducated and always the humble servant, you know, not great, but it's 1934.
Yeah. Like it'll make you very uncomfortable, but it's not unexpected for this era.
Right. But this was one of the first films, you know, major motion picture films, you know, like obviously Oscar Micheaux was making films focused on and about black characters. So it's not one of the first films, but this is one of the first like major motion pictures produced and directed by white filmmakers starring white people where you have this mammy caricature archetype and they're saying like, we're going to focus on their character and see what they're going through and their heartache. Like movies were not doing that with black characters at this time. So in the same way that, you know, a lot of scholars or film analysis will look at Sidney Poitier movies nowadays and be like, oh, so quaint compared to like Harry Belafonte's work, where his work was like way more radical, and Sidney Poitier's was, you know, trying to toe the line, trying to assimilate, you know. This is kind of the same thing where it's like, by today's standards, some of it's a little cringe, but for 1934, like these were major necessary steps for black people in cinema, as odd and offensive as that may sound to some people.
No, but it's true. It's true. I mean, there's so many moments when we keep coming to like, oh, you're almost making the point, but you're not. I feel like to be specific, there's so many moments where Peola is crying to her mother, Delilah, about being black and wanting to be white. And even though she's white passing, you know, as we said, and Delilah keeps saying, you have to accept it, which is like, I had interpreted that as just this film not feeling that they could just say, be proud of it, or black is beautiful, which is like obviously what you interpret she's telling her child, but it's so frustrating to hear
that is
the words accept.
That is a white writer in the 30s writing that. You know, it's like,
exactly. You're like, oh, come on, like you're so close.
But it did, it did remind me of a book that I read. So if you like this movie or are fascinated by it and intrigued by this, you know, concept, one, see the Douglas Sirk version. I haven't seen it. Sonja has. She says it's much better and it goes way deeper into, you know, the race thing, the places we probably wanted it to go. But there's a book that I read several years ago called Son of a Bitch. What's it called? I
was like, oh, it's called
The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man. And it is essentially very similar to this story, where it takes place in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it is about a half black, half white young man who is white passing and kind of does what this character does and decides, I'm just going to move away and I'm just going to be a white man because it's just way easier. Because, I mean, this is also the early 1900s where people were still getting lynched and shit. So, you know, like you want to have black pride and be proud of who you are. But when they're killing your people and you are a half breed, you kind of like, you empathize, you know. Anyways, it's just, it is a fascinating thing to explore. I just wish they would have explored it more.
Agreed. Yeah. And like even Miss B, Claudette's character, she falls short as a true friend in so many moments.
Oh, definitely.
That just builds the frustration as well, because you're like, especially in the second half. Like in the first half, I feel like you really do see a very strong friendship grow between them. And then it almost, as like Peola's starting to have these issues, like Claudette's character seems to just like check out more and more every year.
Yeah.
But and you're just like dying watching that.
And
but anyways, yeah, not to ramble on about that too much, but
and that is kind of one of the interesting things that one of the things that I did think was interesting in the movie. And I'm not sure if it was intentional or unintentional, but you have these two women who have kind of like come up together, and they're under the same roof, and one's black and one's white. And you just, you like see the white privilege, even if you have like, okay, these women at the beginning of this movie were both broke. They were both single mothers. They both like made their money, made their fortune. And you still see what it's like to be white and black in this world and have white privilege, because they have basically been on the same playing field from like starting out point at an economic level the entire time. And their experiences are far from the same. And they even have these shots where, you know, they'll be talking together and having kind of heart to hearts in the mansion that they live in. And Claudette Colbert's character will go up the stairs and Delilah will go down the stairs, and the shot just kind of hangs in a wide shot, and you see one of them going up and one of them going down. And I just thought there were really strong choices in some stuff. And I think, you know, it's 1934. So I think they had to kind of like water shit down, but you could tell that the filmmaker was trying to do things where he could to kind of like visually show the dichotomy.
Totally. Even like costuming wise, and before their success, they're similarly dressed. And then after, like, Claudette's character is wearing sequined glittering gowns and like furs, and Delilah's outfits don't change that much. She's wearing still very just like a simple dress, you know?
Yeah. So I think it's worth a watch, though. I think it's worth a watch just for kind of like, just to kind of see the evolution of black actors and black characters in cinema. If you are a cinephile, I think it's a must watch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to check out the Douglas Sirk version as soon as possible and see just kind of like what he did differently with it.
Yeah, that would be so interesting.
And then it's also worth watching for Louise Beavers, because she is a tremendous actress. And she was a groundbreaker, and she was very critical and outspoken about mammy caricatures and black performers and their depiction in cinema. So, I mean, she fought for roles and got great roles. She was like one of the first black actors to have, you know, her own television show. So she's a key piece of black history in black entertainment. So it's worth watching for her, because and she's from LA also, born grew up in Pasadena, I think. So Imitation of Life, check it out. Once again, it's on that Criterion channel with a bunch of Claudette Colbert films. Check it out. Let us know what you think of it.
Alrighty. Well, that's a wrap on our Claudette Colbert spotlight. God, we had so much fun watching all of these films. It Happened One Night, Midnight, and Imitation of Life. 3 films that prove why she's an all-time great. It's obvious. Let us know what you guys think of the episode and these 3 films. If you have a favorite Claudette Colbert film that we missed, let us know. You can scroll down and click send us a text to share your thoughts on the episode. Send us movie recommendations or even themes or movies you'd like to maybe hear us talk about here on the show. We love getting feedback from y'all. You can also follow us on Instagram at Gimme Three Podcast. That's GIMME, spell out 3 podcast. And every week we post some fun movie edits of the movies we're talking about, behind the scenes shots, and we even have polls on our story where you can help pick what we watch next. So stay tuned for more. And if you want even more content, you can subscribe to our Patreon. We've got exclusive spoiler-free reviews and recommendations each month, all for just $5 a month, so check it out. Also, if you want to support the show even more, don't forget to set our episodes to auto-download on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Just really helps us boost our reach and, connect with even more cinephiles. Alrighty, Nick, you can tell our lovely listeners where they can find you on the socials.
You can find me on Letterboxd, on Instagram, or on Blue Sky at Nicholas Ibarra. Ibarra is spelled with a Y.
And you guys can find me on Instagram at Portrait of a Cinephile or on Letterboxd at Beth Stratus. It's just B and then my last name, F Stratus. Once again, thank you so much for listening to the Gimme Three podcast, and we'll see you at the movies.